Wren Calloway had learned, a long time ago, not to expect anything good from the world. She was 22 years old, and for as long as she could remember, she had been told the same thing in different ways. Worthless, weak, nobody. In the Silverfang pack, where wolves were ranked by strength, magic, and blood, Wren stood at the very bottom. She was an Omega with no gift, no power, and no place among the strong. While other wolves trained in the fighting yards or practiced pack magic under the moon, Wren spent her days scrubbing pots in the kitchens of the pack manor, her hands raw, and her shoulders always slightly bent, as if she had learned to make herself smaller, so no one would notice her at all. Her mother had died when she was young, and her father, a low-ranking guard, had passed 2 winters later. She had been raised since then by Mabel, the pack matron, a stern woman who never let Wren forget that she was a burden being tolerated, not a member of the family being loved. "You should be grateful," Mabel would say, whenever Wren dared to complain. "A worthless Omega like you is lucky to have a roof at all." Wren had stopped arguing years ago. It was easier to stay quiet, to keep her head down, to disappear into her chores. She told herself she didn't need anyone's approval. But some nights, when the manor was silent and the moon hung heavy and silver in the sky, she would sit by her small window and wonder what it might feel like to matter to someone. Just once. The Blood Moon Gathering was the one night a year when every unmated wolf in the pack, regardless of rank, was required to appear before the Alpha King. It was said that on this night, under the full power of the blood moon, a wolf's instincts were at their strongest, and sometimes, rarely, a fated bond would reveal itself between 2 souls meant to be together. For most wolves, the gathering was a night of hope and excitement. For Wren, it was a night of dread. She did not want to go. She never wanted to go. But Mabel insisted, mostly because Omegas were required by pack law to attend, and any absence would bring shame on the household. So Wren dressed in the same plain gray dress she wore every year, tied her dark hair back, and walked to the courtyard with her eyes fixed on the ground, already bracing herself for what was coming. The courtyard was full of wolves in their finest clothes, laughing, whispering, filled with anticipation. Torches lined the stone walls, and at the far end, on a raised platform, stood Cale Ashwood, the Alpha King. Cale was not a man people spoke about lightly. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes the color of a winter storm. He had ruled the Silverfang pack since he was 25, taking the throne after his father's death, and in the years since, he had built a reputation for being cold, controlled, and untouchable. His wolf, a massive silver-furred beast named Ragnar, was said to be even colder than the man himself. Ragnar had never once shown interest in any wolf presented to him, no matter how strong, beautiful, or gifted. Some whispered that the king's wolf simply did not care for anyone at all. One by one, the unmated wolves stepped forward to be seen by Cale and his wolf. Ragnar barely lifted his head for most of them. A few wolves left the platform in tears, humiliated by being so plainly ignored. Wren watched it all from the back of the crowd, silently hoping no one would notice her, hoping the ceremony would end before her name was called. It was not to be so simple. "Wren Calloway," a voice announced. A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the nearby wolves. Someone muttered something about the worthless Omega finally being seen, and someone else laughed at the idea that she would even bother stepping forward. Wren felt her face grow hot, but there was no escaping it. Slowly, she walked toward the platform, keeping her eyes down, feeling every stare like a weight pressing into her back. She reached the front and forced herself to look up at Cale. His expression was unreadable, distant, already bored, as if he were counting the minutes until the ceremony ended. Beside him, Ragnar lay still, his golden eyes half closed with disinterest. For a moment, nothing happened. Wren felt the familiar sting of humiliation rising in her chest. Of course, even the king's wolf, who ignored everyone, would have no reason to notice her. She turned to walk away, wanting nothing more than to disappear into the crowd and never think about this night again. That was when it happened. Ragnar rose to his feet. The crowd's laughter died instantly. The great silver wolf, easily the size of a small horse, moved with slow, deliberate steps down from the platform. Wolves scrambled to clear a path as he crossed the entire courtyard, his golden eyes fixed only on Ren. She froze, unable to move, unable to understand what was happening. Ragnar stopped in front of her. And then, in complete silence, before the entire pack, the Alpha King's wolf lowered his massive head and bowed. Gasps spread through the courtyard like wildfire. No wolf, in the history of the Silver Fang pack, had ever seen their king's wolf bow to anyone, let alone an Omega everyone had spent years dismissing as worthless. Ren stood completely still, her heart pounding, certain this had to be some kind of mistake, some trick her mind was playing on her. On the platform, Kale's calm expression shattered into something close to shock. He stared at his own wolf, as if he did not recognize him. "Ragnar," he said quietly, almost a warning. The wolf did not move. The gathering ended in confusion and whispers. Kale ordered Ren brought to his study that same night, his voice sharp with a barely controlled edge. She sat across from him, hands folded tightly in her lap, trying not to shake as he paced back and forth. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I didn't do anything," Ren said, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. "I don't have any gifts. I don't have magic. I don't know why he did that." Kale studied her for a long moment, his stormy eyes narrowed, searching for some sign of deception. He had spent his whole life being lied to, manipulated by wolves who wanted power through him. He did not trust easily, and he certainly did not trust an Omega who had, until tonight, been invisible to him entirely. "My wolf does not bow," Kale said. "Not to anyone, not even to me, on the nights he disagrees with my choices." "I'm sorry," Ren whispered, though she did not know what she was apologizing for. Kale dismissed her that night without answers, but the questions did not leave him. Over the following days, he found himself watching her, almost against his will. He noticed things he had somehow never noticed before, despite having lived in the same pack manner his whole life. He noticed how she moved quietly through the halls, never asking for anything, never causing trouble. He noticed how the younger pups in the kitchen adored her, how she always found a way to make them laugh, even when she looked exhausted herself. He noticed, one evening, how she calmed an injured, panicked young wolf in the healing den simply by sitting beside him and speaking softly, when 3 trained healers had failed to settle him. There was something in her, something quiet and steady, that the rest of the pack had never bothered to look for, because they had already decided, long before she was old enough to prove otherwise, that she was worthless. Not everyone was pleased by the sudden attention Ren was receiving. Draven, a powerful alpha from a rival bloodline who had long wanted more influence over the throne, saw the bowing as an opportunity. If the king's wolf had bonded with a weak, powerless Omega, then perhaps the king himself could be pressured, embarrassed, even challenged. Draven began spreading rumors through the pack, suggesting Ren had used forbidden magic to trick Ragnar, and demanding that the pack elders investigate her. The pressure grew. Mabel, sensing the shifting winds, suddenly began treating Ren with false kindness, hoping to benefit from whatever was happening. Other pack members who had ignored Ren for years now watched her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. It was, in its own way, almost worse than being ignored. At least invisibility had never come with danger. One night, Draven's plotting turned violent. A group of his followers staged an attack near the training grounds, timed for when Ren would be walking back from the kitchens. It was meant to look like an accident, a lesson meant to frighten her into leaving the packlands quietly. But Kale, restless and unable to stop thinking about her, happened to be patrolling nearby. He heard her cry out before he saw her. By the time he reached the clearing, 2 wolves had cornered her against the trees. Something in Kale broke loose in that moment, some wall he had spent years building around himself. He did not think. He simply moved, faster than he had moved in a long time, and drove the attackers back before they could do more than frighten her. When it was over, he knelt beside her, checking for injuries with hands that were, for the first time anyone had seen, visibly unsteady. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough. Ren shook her head, though tears had gathered in her eyes, not from pain, but from the shock of finally, truly being seen by someone who mattered. "Why do you care?" she whispered. "I'm nobody. I've always been nobody." Kale looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his stormy eyes. My wolf does not bow to nobody, he said quietly. He bowed to you. I've spent days trying to understand why. I think, somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to understand it and started simply believing it. It was not a grand declaration of love, not yet, but it was honest, and for Ren, who had spent her whole life being dismissed, it meant more than any grand speech could have. Draven did not give up so easily. Furious that his attack had failed, he invoked an old pack law before the elders, demanding that Ren prove her worth through the trial of the Fangs, an ancient test meant to determine whether an Omega was fit to stand beside an Alpha King. He was certain that without magic or fighting skill, Ren would fail, giving him the excuse he needed to remove her and weaken Kale's position along with her. The trial took place before the entire pack. Instead of demanding strength or violence, the ancient trial required the challenger to face a circle of distressed, half-wild wolves, kept deliberately unsettled by pack magic, and see whether they could be calmed without force. It was designed to test a bond, not a body. Ren stepped into the circle, terrified but steady. She did not fight. She did not run. She simply knelt down, spoke softly, and let her quiet, patient nature do what it had always done, without anyone ever noticing before. One by one, the wild wolves calmed around her, drawn not to power, but to peace. It became clear, watching her, that Ren carried a rare and old gift, tied to a nearly forgotten bloodline of the pack's earliest healers, wolves who led not through dominance, but through connection. Draven's plan collapsed in front of the very pack he had hoped to turn against her. His manipulation was exposed, his attack on Ren revealed by witnesses who had grown tired of his cruelty. The elders stripped him of his standing, and the pack that had once mocked Ren now watched her with something entirely new: respect. Kale stood before all of them that night, his hand finding Ren's without hesitation, and declared her his mate before the entire Silverfang pack. There were no more whispers of worthless, no more laughter at her expense, only silence, and then, slowly, the sound of wolves bowing their heads, one after another, in the same way Ragnar had bowed weeks before. Ren, who had spent her whole life believing she was nobody, finally understood that she had never truly been worthless at all. She had simply been waiting for someone brave enough to look past what everyone else assumed and see what had been there all along.